You open a bottle of orange juice. It smells fine, mostly. But there is something slightly off, a faint note you can't quite name. Not spoiled, just less alive, less bright than it was last week. Most people chalk this up to their imagination, but there is a chemical name for what just happened. Flavor scalping. I'm Chrxstos, I'm a medicinal chemist, and this is where packaging becomes chemistry. It sounds like a dramatic term, but the mechanism is simple. Some of the molecules that give orange juice its citrus brightness can slowly migrate out of the liquid and into the wall of the container. One classic example is d-limonene, one of the key molecules behind citrus scent and flavor. In certain plastic containers, d-limonene can diffuse into the polymer, so part of that fresh citrus character is gradually absorbed by the packaging material. So the bottle isn't just holding the orange juice, chemically it is part of the environment the juice is in. And the same principle applies beyond orange juice to foods, skincare, supplements, fragrances, and any product where small molecules can move between the formula and the packaging material over time. That is the basic mechanism. The formula and the package can exchange small molecules. This movement happens in two directions. Direction 1. Molecules from the product migrate into the package. That's scalping. The package pulls flavor, scent, or active compounds out of the formula. Orange juice losing brightness is one case. The same principle can apply to coffee aromas, fragrance molecules, essential oils, or other small compounds that are chemically compatible with the packaging material. Direction 2. Molecules from the package migrate into the product. That's leaching. This is the direction most people have heard about, usually through discussions of BPA in food contact plastics. And yes, it's real. Components of the packaging material can, under certain conditions, transfer into what you eat, drink, or apply to your skin. Scalping and leaching don't automatically mean that something is unsafe. They are material behaviors, and whether they matter depends on the formula, the packaging material, temperature, time, and storage conditions. So, instead of asking only whether a package is safe, product developers ask whether it is compatible with the formula inside it. Fatty foods, acidic drinks, oil-based skincare, fragrance-heavy formulas, they don't interact with packaging in the same way. A formula with solvents, oils, or active ingredients may extract more from the packaging material, while a formula with delicate aroma compounds may lose more into it. That's why packaging has to be tested over time, not just judged by how it looks. Developers need to know how the package and the formula behave together on the shelf, in a warm bathroom, during shipping, and under real conditions of use. The invisible enemies of efficacy. A good example is vitamin C serum. A well-formulated vitamin C serum is not just a liquid into a nice bottle. It is a formula built around a stability challenge. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, is sensitive to oxygen, light, heat, and trace metals. Even under good conditions, it tends to degrade over time. And as it degrades, it can change color, lose potency, and in some cases, become more irritating to the skin. So the question is not whether vitamin C can degrade. It can. The more useful question is how fast it degrades. And packaging is one of the factors that can influence that speed. Even when a bottle is closed, it's not completely cut off from the outside environment. Depending on the material, small amounts of oxygen or other molecules can still pass through over time. One of the most important metrics in packaging science is something called the oxygen transmission rate, OTR. In plain language, how much oxygen passes through a given area of material over a given period of time. You can think of OTR almost like a traffic count. Oxygen molecules hit the outside of the bottle and a small fraction may pass through the material. It is usually a small amount, but over weeks or months, it can become relevant for sensitive formulas. There is a similar measurement for moisture, called the water vapor transmission rate, or WVTR. And moisture inside the product is not just water being present. It can affect texture, destabilize powders, influence preservation, and change how the formula behaves physically. So when a developer chooses a package, they're not only choosing the shape or the material, they are also choosing how much oxygen and moisture the formula may be exposed over time. There is also headspace. The empty space at the top of a bottle is not really empty. It is a small internal atmosphere that contains oxygen and water vapor. For a stable formula, that may not make a big difference, but for a sensitive one, like vitamin C serum, a retinoid treatment, an antioxidant blend, or a supplement with volatile compounds, the internal atmosphere can become relevant over time. This is why different package types create different exposure patterns. A wide mouth jar exposes a large surface area of product to fresh air every time you open it. A tube limits that exposure. A pump limits it further, because only a small amount of the product near the nozzle is exposed. An airless system goes one step further. Many airless packages use a piston or a collapsing inner structure that moves as product is dispensed. So outside air does not rush back in to replace what was used. But airless packaging doesn't remove every source of exposure. It mainly changes the exposure pattern. It can reduce oxygen entering during use, but temperature, time, and the initial fill conditions still matter. Formula package compatibility. But packaging is not only about blocking oxygen, moisture, or light. It also has to be chemically compatible with the formula itself. As we said before, BPA is probably the most familiar example. It is a compound associated with certain plastics, and under specific conditions, it can migrate into food or drink. That's why many products are now labeled BPA-free. But BPA-free answers only one question. It doesn't tell you everything about the packaging material or how it behaves with a specific formula. Replacing materials have their own chemical properties, so they also need to be tested in the final package and product system. The same issue also works in the other direction. A formula with oils, solvents, acids, or active ingredients can sometimes behave like a mild extraction medium. It may pull compounds from the packaging material that a simpler water-based formula would not. That's why compatibility testing exists. Developers place the formula in the proposed package and stress the system over time with elevated temperature, longer storage, and real use stimulation to see whether anything migrates, whether anything degrades, and whether the package and formula remain stable together. The design target is simple. The package should interact as little as possible with what is inside it. But in practice, every formula is different. Every storage condition is different, and the package that works well for one product may not work the same way for another. The engineering choice. This is where the usual question becomes too simple. People often ask, which package is the best? But scientifically, the better question is, best against what? There is no universal best package. There is only a package that fits the vulnerabilities of a specific formula. Glass is a good example. We often associate glass with premium packaging, and for a good reason. As a barrier, glass is excellent. It is almost completely impermeable to oxygen and water vapor. But a package is not only the wall around the product, it is also the closure, the light exposure, the weight, the risk of breakage, the way the product is dispensed, and the way the consumer uses it over time. So glass may be the better barrier, but that doesn't always make it the better package. Plastic is lighter. It doesn't shatter. It can be engineered into pumps, tubes, airless systems, and collapsible structures. It can also be made opaque, which helps protect formulas that are sensitive to light. It may not be as strong a barrier as glass in every dimension, but for some products, it can create a more practical overall system. Even the thickness of the plastic matters. A thicker plastic wall doesn't only change how premium the package feels, it can also slow diffusion, giving the formula more time before oxygen, moisture, or volatile molecules become relevant. So thickness is not only an aesthetic choice, it can affect how the package performs. For more sensitive products, pharmaceutical creams, high-potency serums, oxygen-sensitive compounds, or certain fragrance formulations, developers may use aluminum tubes or multi-layer laminates. These materials are built in layers, so one layer can provide structure, another can improve the barrier, and another can help with compatibility. So again, the answer to which package is best doesn't begin with the material. It begins with what the product needs protection from. Is the formula vulnerable to oxygen, light, moisture, loss of volatile aroma compounds, microbial contamination, physical stress during shipping? Once you know what the formula needs protection from, package selection becomes an engineering decision. And like every engineering decision, it comes with trade-offs. Protection versus cost, barrier performance versus sustainability, stability versus user experience, and ideal design versus manufacturing reality. So when you look at a product, the ingredient list gives you one part of the picture, but it doesn't tell you how these ingredients were protected from the way to you. Through the package, the storage conditions, and the time between manufacturing and use. A good package cannot turn a weak formula into a good one, but it can help a well-designed formula to stay closer to what it was meant to be. That's why packaging is not just presentation. It is a part of how a product performs. I'm Chrxstos. See you on the next one.